Welcome back to the continuing conversation between the rabbi and I, only this time it's the rabbis and I, where Rabbi Kushi Schusterman has joined us. And I would like to summarize our conversation about numbers 12, verses 1 through 16. Have we come to the conclusion that interfaith and interracial relationships are something that God approves of or verifies through this quotation, or do we just agree that God approves of them or doesn't mention them specifically, but they are something that's accepted in Judaism?
I think what we discussed and what the conclusion, what I like to think of is when the Messiah comes, he'll give us the definite answer. Until then, I can look at a text, Kushi can look at a text, a third rabbi can look at the text, and we can each put on the table how we see what we're viewing, how we're evolving. And I don't want to think that any of the three of us are the judge and jury and want to approve or condemn anything until such a time when it's explained to us. Until then, as rabbis, we explain, and people can say, no, I don't agree with you, or that doesn't seem right, so I'm not going along with your decision. And I think that supported Kushi. The Talmud always gives us the minority-majority opinions and always outlines the two different discussions, and that then gives us the basis for deciding how do I see my Judaism evolving? What do you think, Kushi?
So I think that in general, I'm in agreement. And as an observant rabbi who is in what one may refer to as orthodox, although I like to say that I'm the unorthodox Orthodox rabbi, that for me, in order to do a religious life cycle event, for example, I have to follow what the traditional interpretation of Jewish law is, right? If you're in California, you need to follow California law. If you're in Maryland, you have to follow Maryland law. And sometimes those laws differ. So if someone's in your congregation, then at some point you have to make a decision of which services you're willing to offer or not willing to offer. For example, in interfaith marriage, I wouldn't be comfortable and would feel that it would be a dereliction of my duty as an Orthodox rabbi, and I think it would be illegal for me to do something which I'm not able to do. On the other hand, an interracial marriage, I would say, I have reason to believe that there's no reason for me not to do that wedding if they're both Jewish. And in your situation, you have a different viewpoint and have different guidelines by which you need to follow. So I won't encourage an interfaith relationship. I won't do an interfaith religious ceremony. But at the same time, if a person is in an interfaith relationship, I won't deny including them as much as possible in the Jewish community where I can.
And I think that's really a neat example, a perfect example of respecting each other and working with each other to keep everyone on the Jewish train so that there's a car, a place, and a rabbi for each of our members of our diversified Jewish community.
And I am proud to say that I got a Reform rabbi to discuss Mashiach in public.
Now,
And thank God for that, if I may say so.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
But our conversation is extended beyond that particular subject into the topic of Jewish culture and music and art. Can I ask you guys to share your opinions in that area as well?
Yeah, can I just start with something? I want to pique Kushi's curiosity, and I'm going to ask him a very leading kind of a question, okay? Let's say
it's not a courtroom, you're fine.
Let's say, Kushi, hypothetically, a non-Jewish artist, someone who's really good working in metal, was to design the doors of the Ark in a synagogue where we keep the Torah, right? So, but he's non-Jewish, very talented working with metal. And he designs these beautiful, but they're also spiritual, this idea of reaching up to heaven and bringing the scroll down. Does that make the artist a de facto Jew, a crypto Jew? I mean, how do we define art or music as Jewish, not Jewish? Does the person have to be Jewish? You understand what I'm asking you?
I understand what you're asking me. So there's a question about the artist, and then there's a separate question about the art. For the artist to become Jewish, we already covered in our first discussion.
Correct.
But regarding the art being Jewish, I believe there's a story in the Talmud about, I think his name was Nakdimon. Nakdimon, there's the doors of Nakdimon that were in the Holy Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his name was Nakdimon. I may be mispronouncing the name.
Mispronouncing it, yeah, it's close to that. But go ahead.
But my Google's not easily available. Nicanor's doors. Nicanor's doors. So Nicanor was this non-Jewish guy who built these beautiful, beautiful doors, if my memory serves me correctly. And Joe, if you can check that up and make sure that I've got it right, that Nicanor made these doors and he wanted to donate them to the temple. And the rabbis, they were beautiful pieces of art, which became the doors, the main doors that were used in the Holy Temple. So I don't think that the religious status of an artist defines whether the art is Jewish. I think the message of the art, if it has Jewish values seeping through it, then it's Jewish.
So then our criteria is the product itself, whether it's a musician or a writer, rather than the religion of the individual.
As a rabbi, you probably have heard people say, Rabbi, I'm a Jew in my heart.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a Jew in my heart. And you'll find that often I go to certain people and I say, I didn't see you in services. And they say, Rabbi, you don't understand, I'm in the secret service. Right? So you have that section of the world where people are in the secret service. They're Jewish, but they're a Jew in their heart. And I believe that one of the main quotes from the Mishnah is Hamaisa hua ikar. The action is the main thing. And I've encouraged people who are married often. No one asked you to love your spouse. No one asked you to be in head over heels. Just act as if you love your spouse all the time, and act as if you're head over heels. And usually you'll start feeling that way. And I think the same thing goes for the art and culture. If you act in the way where it fits the Jewish criteria, then by all means, there's no reason to think that the art wouldn't be Jewish, even if the artist happens to not be Jewish.
So if we talk about music and individuals or writers, then would apply the same. We would have to look at the product as opposed to the specific religion. I mention this because, and you've probably heard it before, people will say you can't include it or it's not a Jewish book because the writer wasn't Jewish. And that's why I'm bringing the subject up.
Right. So at times I do find that people who are anti-Semitic, even if their art is good, I still don't want to include it in my library. But if the religion of the individual, I think, is not a really good criteria to define whether it's something you're willing to include. The person's not Jewish and they wrote a beautiful poem about the Jewish people. All of a sudden it's not Jewish because the person happens to be a Christian, happens to be a Muslim, happens to be an atheist. I mean, if you're going to start, going to each person and asking them where they had their bris before you listen to their music, you're not going to be listening to music very often.
Right. So what we agreed to, what we're saying is it's the end product and how it reflects Judaism, how it moves us, how it brings us closer to God. And
correct.
And
we finally agree. Mazel tov.
So it seems, Rabbi Block, that we can keep the art doors at Temple Beth Torah after all. Thank you, Rabbi Schusterman. And What shall we leave as the end note to this conversation? Get that note, music?
There is a place, Kushi, in Judaism for all of our for Klal Yisrael. And there's no reason to not observe or not teach and not learn just because that particular rabbi or teaching doesn't appeal to you. There's a place for all our people.
And I think not only all of our people, but all people in general. All people in general. There's many people who live locally who are not Jewish and aren't planning on becoming Jewish. And they just want to know what's the Jewish view. And it's important that we are actually a light unto the nations, not only a light that they see from afar, but a light that they can come to and be able to see up close.